can start setting up the materials for this. So we'll start with the candy. So just move this up. And then I'll change the editor from timeline to shader editor, or whichever editor you're on. And then you can click on new, or with this mesh selected, we can go to the last icon in the settings for the object, and we can click on new. Then I can rename this, so I'll call this candy. Okay, so we'll work on this step by step. So we'll start with the color and then move on from there. So my Node Wrangler add-on is active, so that is under edit, preferences, add-ons. Is this Node Wrangler, so it is active. Because of some of the shortcuts we're going to use, I would recommend that you turn that on. And then of course, save preferences. So we'll start with the noise. So I'll hit Shift A, then noise. So I want to have the candy be red, but I don't want it to be like a perfect red all over, because in real life, you'll never find an object that has one pure singular color. So to introduce that variation, we'll use a noise. So for this to work, first of all, we need to preview it. So I'll go to the rendered view. You can hit Z, rendered. And then I'll select this and hit Ctrl T. Then I need to preview this. So I'll hit Ctrl Shift, click. So Ctrl Shift and click on this, right? Then, so Ctrl T for this, Ctrl Shift and click to preview the noise. Then once this can be previewed, we can come in and adjust the scale, as you can see. And then you can adjust things like the detail as well, the distortion, but this is a bit much, so 0 is fine. So this is just like basic noise. That's just going to allow us to create color variation. So I'm going to maybe make use of 5. Then we need to assign colors for the black and the white of this noise. So I'll hit Shift A, and then I'll add a color ramp. And with it kind of floating around, just connect it after the noise texture. So just click. So I want to use a red, or you can make it whatever color you like, because the Ring Pop candies come in many colors. You have red ones, you have green ones, you have yellow ones. So whichever color that pleases you. I'll click on this particular stop and then come and change the color. So I'll take this up. That is the value. And I want this to be red. So I'll pick a red, but then I want it to be like a darker red, right? Then I'll copy this hex code. Then I'll select the second stop. Then I'll paste the hex code. And then what I'm going to do for the second stop, I'm going to increase the value a bit, right? So you can see that where there was black, you have like a darker red. Where there was white, you have a red, but that's slightly lighter than the darker one. Then I can connect this color ramp to the color of this principled BSDF. So the principled BSDF is going to allow us to achieve the result that we're looking for, because right now we're just previewing through the result that these 4 nodes are producing, right? Another thing I'd like to change here is the texture coordinate. I've been using generated, but I'd like to change it to object. And if I preview this for the noise, you can see we have generated, then we have object. So for now, I think you can leave it because I'm happy with this. But if you're having problems, you can change it to object, and then you can start making your adjustments. So you have to now adjust the scale even further. And if I preview it, you can see this is what we have. So I think I'll leave it at object because I've already made the change. So I'll connect it to color, then BSDF output to surface. And now we do have our red color. That's the red or the candy. But we are yet to kind of have the candy look, but we're going to get to that. Adjust these knots slightly further, just a bit. The reason I'm doing so is so that I can see that the darker parts are being seen, just to add a bit of contrast. Okay, so it doesn't have to be super obvious. Then we need to have a bit of surface displacement. So for surface displacement, we're going to make use of a bump node. So when I say surface displacement, I mean surface, like the roughness of a surface. Like nothing is 100% smooth. Sometimes you can have holes, you can have scratches, whatever it is that a surface might have. That's what I mean by surface displacement. So I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to use a bump. Okay. So I can use this noise texture. So usually the bump works well with black and white nodes and black and white images. So I'll use this noise texture to create my bump. So I'll direct this factor from the noise to the height input of the bump. So I'll click on this and direct it to the height. And then for the bump itself, I'm going to direct it to the normal of the principal BSDF. So normal to normal. So data types must match. And now you'll see that we do have some roughness. And if I preview the bump by hitting Control Shift, we can see that it's very rough. So we can reduce the strength. So we can reduce the strength to really tiny, because I want it to have like a really, really tiny bump, not something that's obvious like that. It's just, it's there, but it's subtle. So maybe something like that. Okay. Then I can Control Shift, click on the principal BSDF to preview. Okay. Then usually with these types of candies, they do have like a bit of scratches, and also they have holes. So let's start with the holes. So I'll hit Shift A, and then we'll search for Voronoi. Voronoi texture. Voronoi texture gives you circles that are black and others, and a white background, sorry. So circles that are black and a white background. So I'll click on that. Then I'll connect this to the mapping. So we have this mapping node. So I'll connect this to the vector input of the Voronoi. And then if I preview this, Control Shift, you can see that not much is happening, but we can come in and increase the scale. If I start increasing the scale, we can see we have black, we have white. So the black sections can be the black dots, and then the white sections can be the white background. But right now there's no distinction between the two. So to create that distinction, we'll need to add a color ramp, but this time we're not using it to remap color. We're using it to create contrast. So I'll hit Shift A, then I'll type in color and we look for color ramp, and then connect it just after the Voronoi. Then adjust this, but actually basically these tops, I'm going to bring the white closer to the black one. Okay, and then we have this. If you increase the detail, you'll start to see that some of the dots will start disappearing. So you can leave it at 0 for this, but I'll increase it just a bit, maybe something like that, right? And here we have our holes, right? These are going to be the holes. So the blacks are going to kind of have like a inside indentation, and then the whites will remain as they are. But there are too many, so I can reduce this. And again, if I reduce the scale, that means I have to come back to the color ramp and adjust the stops. So that's something that you'll have to remember. Okay. Then I'll create another noise. So I'll hit Shift A, create another noise. And with this noise, what I want it to do, if I just make this window large so that you can see the connection, let me move this here. So I want to connect this vector to the vector for the noise. Then if I preview this, Control Shift and increase the scale, I want to increase the contrast of this in a way that is going to allow me to have irregular scratches. So I'll hit Shift A and I'll add a color ramp. And then I'll adjust these knots, the stops. Okay, I can increase the scale. So I want it to have like, I want them to be like scratches, but they're not like proper scratches. Okay, so something like that. Something like that. So these ones are very circular, very perfect circle, and these ones are not. So I want to mix them together. I want to combine them together. And then the final result will drive now the surface displacement. So I'll hit Shift A and then I'll add a mix color node. So with this mix color node, I'm going to connect the color for this first color ramp to A, and then the color for this second color ramp to B. So that's what I'll do, like so. Then if I preview this mix, so Control Shift click, this is what we have. Usually the mix node makes use of blending modes. So the blending mode that we're going to use for this is, if I click on this mix option, the blending mode that I would like to use is darken. So I'll click on darken, and then there's this value called factor, and I'll increase it to 1 so that both of them have the same influence, instead of one having more influence than the other. If, for example, we use mix, if I set it to 1, we will see more of this noise. If I set it to 0, we will see the dots from the Voronoi. So that's not what I want. I want all of them to be visible at the same time, so they're like being combined at the same time. So I'll use darken, and I'll set the factor to 1. Okay, then I'll add another bump. So we already have this bump, I'll add another one. So I'll hit Shift A, type in bump, and then I'll connect this second bump after the first one. So the software will automatically connect this normal to the normal of second bump. So normal to normal. So again, data types must be similar. So you can't connect this however you like, because sometimes if you do that, it won't work. So in the normal that is coming from this previous bump, this is going to work quite well. Then this darken needs to be connected to the height input of this second bump. So that's what I'll do. Then I'll preview, so Control Shift, and then you see we have our displacement, right? But this is a lot. So I'll reduce the strength to a lower value. Okay, so it needs to be there, but it doesn't need to be like a crazy amount. So I'll just reduce this to a lower value. Okay, and then I'll preview the principal BSDF by Control Shift clicking on it, and then you can make further adjustments to the strength, right? So here we've stacked 2 bump nodes. So we have the first one, and then we have the second one. So the first one was just like a slight surface roughness from the noise that is driving the colors, and then the second one is to create like surface imperfections like scratches, bumps, and all of that. right? If I preview, that's what we have. Make this look like actual candy. We'll now need to come into the principled BSDF and make our changes, right? So we're going to need to introduce a bit of shininess, right? So it's very flat by default. It is shiny, but not in the way that you would think candy is, or you know that candy is. So we've kind of set up the color. The next thing is metallic. This is not something that we want to be metallic, but if you ever wanted to create a metallic material, you can set this to 1 and you'll get a metal, and this would look really interesting as a metal, right? But that's not what you're looking for. So the first thing that I want to adjust is the roughness. So candy is very shiny, so we need to lower this value. If we increase it, the material becomes very flat. But if we reduce it, it becomes very shiny, right? And then we have the IOR, which is the index of refraction. We're going to leave it at 1.5. And then we have now the thing that's going to make this look like actual candy is transmission. So if we look at the settings, we have transmission. For the transmission, you'll increase the weight to 1, and it becomes see-through, like you can see through it, but it's not the best compared to what we expect. This is not the best, so we're going to need to introduce something else. So we want, or I want, that when light passes through, it doesn't pass through completely, that there's a volume inside here that kind of, in a way, clouds it so that it's not purely see-through. So to kind of achieve that, I'll hit Shift A, and then we'll use a volume absorption node. This volume absorption node is going to be connected to the volume input of the material output. So the volume to volume. So the color here, I'm going to set it to a red. So I'm going to go to my red color. So I'll choose the darker one. I'll click on the color and I'll copy the hex code. So whichever color you've used, yellow, purple, whatever you want. Then I'll come to this color option and I will paste and enter. Then I'll need to increase the density. So for the density, I'm going to use, let's say 100. And when I do that, you'll now see that it's not as, doesn't allow light to pass through as much as before. So I'll set this to, let's say 250. This is really, really dark. So maybe I could try 150. So it's still really dark. Maybe I could brighten up the color. If I brighten it up too much, it becomes weird, right? But I do feel it's because of the environment. So we need an environment. So I'll leave it at 150. Then at the top of this shader editor, we have this object option. So I'll choose world. If I go to the top here where we have the preview options, like if it's wireframe, solid, shading, or render, if we click on this drop down, I am using a scene world. Actually, I'm not. I think that was for the shading. So I'm not. So I think I should introduce one. So there are many ways to introduce a world. So we can do it in the world option of the shader editor, or you can come to this drop down, choose a scene world, and notice this changes, right? So the reason this was looking so dark is because we have a black environment, as you can see with this color. So that's why. So I'd like to change this. So in my case, I'm not going to use this. I'll turn off scene world. I'll hit Shift A and I'll look for environment texture. When it's added, I'll hit Control T to bring up the texture coordinate in the mapping. Then I'll click on open and I'll browse to where I have my HDRIs. So I'll go to documents. I think that's where I have mine. So I have my HDRI. So here they are. I have downloaded them. I'll pick one. I think I want a studio one. And click on open image. When it comes to HDRIs, you need to go to HDRI Haven. I think it's called. It's not called Polyhaven. So when you go to Polyhaven, here you can have access to a lot of HDRIs that you can use for your scenes. So download them and load them up, right? So I'll connect this color option to the color option of the background. And then if I go back to, actually I've reduced the strength. So let me use maybe 0.6, right? Okay. Then I can go to world object. Then I can increase this density maybe to 250. And I like that. But now we have an issue where we're seeing this image. That is the HDRI. So if I rotate around, you can see that's what we're seeing. I don't want to see it, right? So if you don't want to see it, we can go to the render settings, and in the render settings we have under film is this option called transparent. If you turn this on, it gets rid of the HDRI, like you can't see it, but it's still working in the scene. So I'll turn on transparent, and this is what we have, right? So you can play around with the density. So if I set it to 100, it's something different. Set it to 2500, it's something different, as you can see. So yeah, so in my case, I found 250 worked really well. It's a matter of experimentation. Do you want it to look really dark? Do you want it to be very light? But normally these candies are the color is very saturated and dense in a particular way, right? So there's the candy. So that's how you create this material. So a combination of different techniques, but mostly we've made use of the noises to help us achieve this particular result.